Hello and welcome to this video on why strategic copywriting is the future of the craft. Now, automated writing tools like ChatGPT have made it easier for people to make copy sound good. However, as a result, the internet is flooded with generic sounding copy with very similar sounding messaging. Now, whereas these writing tools are very good at copying the output of a piece of writing, what they can't do is give you the input. So all the things that make a company unique, like the company's values, their tone of voice, the people behind the business. So nowadays, for a business to stand out, strategy is more important than style. Now, strategic copywriting is about focusing on what a piece of copy says and how it says it. Okay, so what is strategic copywriting? Now, strategic copywriting is concerned with the purpose and the intent of a piece of copy. It's not necessarily about trying to make a piece of writing sound good, although that is essentially the result of a well thought out strategy. It's more concerned with clarifying what a piece of copy is meant to do, whether that is increasing sales, improving conversions, or raising awareness. Now, unlike traditional wordsmithing, which is focused on how a piece of copy sounds, strategic copywriting is about becoming more involved in the process. Now, of course, execution is still important, but it's more about the process behind getting to that stage of execution. So essentially, it's a more thoughtful way of approaching a copywriting project. Now, strategic copywriting considers things like the wider funnel, i.e. how the customer journey fits into the wider piece of copy. Things like customer touch points. It's important to know where a customer will be before they land on a page of copy and where they will end up after reading the copy that you have written. So it's a more holistic approach to copywriting, and it looks at the bigger picture. The outcome of a well thought out strategy is that the writing ends up being better because the reasoning behind the copy has been stronger. Strategic copywriting is really changing the game for copywriters. What it does is it gives brands an advantage because it makes them clearer. It gives them more clarity over the purpose of their written communications. Now, it's not about style, it's more about intent. So strategic copywriting aligns what a brand wants to say with what the audience needs to hear. Now, that might sound simple, but there are so many brands out there that are still publishing copy that sounds good, but isn't necessarily working for them. And that's a classic example of style over substance. Now, strategic copywriting, from a copywriter's point of view, working with a brand, it creates a smoother approval process because there has been strategic thinking behind it from the start. As a writer, you're no longer second guessing what you're writing. The client isn't questioning every line that you're producing either, because everyone understands the process behind it. So essentially, it reduces friction to getting a piece of copy out there and published. Essentially, what it is doing for a brand is it's creating like a communication ecosystem, something that's cohesive across all deliverables in terms of tone of voice and messaging. Okay, just to provide some context around strategic copywriting, I want to give you a few examples of projects that I've worked on recently that involved strategy. The first one is I was asked to write a homepage or rewrite a homepage for a technology company. Now, on the surface, the copy sounded good. It kind of ticked the boxes and said everything you would expect the homepage to say, but it wasn't converting. So people weren't clicking through to other pages from the homepage. So the bounce rate was very high, and they weren't making any specific call to action. They weren't clicking the contact button to send an email to make an inquiry. Now, on the surface, like the homepage sounded good, but after closer inspection, it became quite clear that the structure of the page wasn't right. Everything sounded good, but the order of the messaging was all over the place. So what I did was I stripped back the messaging and ensured that we had the most important messaging at the top of the homepage, and that at every touch point, we had a message that was relevant to the customer's journey. And as a result of stripping back the messaging and then doing a little bit of a rewrite in the homepage, through time, that homepage has started to work for the company, and they've started to get more click-throughs, the bounce rate has gone down, and you've actually started to see more inquiries as a result of that. Now, another example that comes to mind is I was recently asked to write an annual report for an international energy company. All the core material was there, so we had all the technical details, all the key achievements. However, there was very rigid reporting standards that had to be met. Now, the company assumed that I would be able to rewrite the existing core content, and that the reporting standards would be met automatically. However, I suggested a different approach, and what we did was I sat down with the client, and we worked through the messaging hierarchy of all the core content that we had, so that we knew at what point in the report we were going to introduce the overarching messages. And as a result of taking that time at the beginning of the project to work out the strategy, we ended up with a report that delivered on the communication front and the compliance front as well. So my point being is that sometimes the value isn't in the words themselves, it's in the decisions that lead to the words being written. Now, I know that the idea of strategy can sometimes feel a little bit intangible, and it's often dismissed as simply thinking time, which of course it can be, but in order to create some clarity and structure around strategic copywriting, I've developed a 5-stage framework called the BNC Method, or the brand new copy method. Now, the first stage is brief the business case, and this is all about defining the objective behind the copy. The second stage is frame the funnel, and this is concerned with where the copy fits into the wider customer journey. The third stage is structure the story, and this is about the narrative of the copy and how it guides the reader towards taking an action. The fourth stage is manage the messaging, and this is all about ensuring that the key messages and the tone of voice fits with the brand. So essentially, it's the messaging hierarchy. And the fifth stage is craft the copy, and this is about the execution. So, word choice, editing, proofreading. Now, this approach is flexible for any copywriting deliverable that requires strategy. And if you want to learn more about this, then I have included a link under the video to the Strategic Copywriter's Toolkit, which is a resource you can use to apply strategy to your own copywriting projects. So when should you use strategic copywriting? Now, in my opinion, strategic copywriting is most valuable when the stakes are high. So if you have a project where there's a lot riding on the outcome, then having a strategic approach is usually the best route to take. Now, it can also be used in situations where the messaging isn't quite working and it's not converting, or there's simply no direction to the copy at all. Sometimes you'll get a client who they know that they need copywriting and they know that they need the services of a copywriter, but they don't necessarily know what the objective behind the copy is. So this could be situations like maybe a brand refresh, where you've got existing copy, but there needs to be purpose behind the new messaging. Or it could be a case that you have a homepage and it simply isn't converting, or within a company, there's a lot of people involved and there's some conflicting views about what the copy could actually be saying. Likewise, it could simply be the case that you have a new product and that product needs defined messaging in terms of its USPs and its value propositions. Now, in all these cases, simply jumping into the project with writing first is risky. Without strategy, the copy might end up sounding good, but ultimately it won't perform as you need it to. Okay, so what makes strategic copywriting effective? Well, at its core, strategic copywriting is about clarity, which comes from having structure and audience insights and predefined goals. And when a piece of copy is goal-driven, it ensures that every message supports the underlying objective. Now, having a clear structure from the beginning, it makes everything else in a piece of copy connect. Essentially, it ensures consistency across tone of voice and messaging across all the deliverables. So, just to wrap up this video, I wanted to provide a final thought. Now, strategic copywriting is about navigating a more complex digital marketing landscape, especially nowadays where generic copy is essentially everywhere, to the point that AI slop has become an accepted term. Now, what makes a piece of copy effective today is not necessarily how good it sounds, but how well it has been thought through. Now, if you're interested in learning more about how to apply strategy to your own copywriting projects, then I've added a link to the Strategic Copywriters Toolkit below this video. Otherwise, I hope you found this video useful. If you have, be sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you again soon.